much, Nadia, for that very, very eloquent summation of the content and especially the argument of the book. What we've decided before letting you loose on the refreshments at the back and of course of the books also at the back, since Nadia is here, before you're going up to Penang, we are doing the same thing in Penang on Saturday, that we'd have perhaps 10 or 15 minutes if there are questions or contributions from the floor, just so that a kind of conversation that I think Nadia's book will engender begins here tonight. So, if there are any questions? Oh, Tommy has to go.
Hello. When Raffles Country Club was established in 1988, was there anything to do with Raffles and Farquhar in the first place?
I'm sorry, I missed the very first part.
Yes. Well, since when Raffles Country Club was established in August 1988 by Lee Kuan Yew, what gave the idea on how the club was organized, and was it to do with William Farquhar and Sir Stamford Raffles? One of the rules in the Raffles Country Club is as Farquhar's surname. What's it got to do?
I'm sorry, I know nothing about Raffles Country Club. But all I can say is that, of course, Country Club was named after Raffles as part of the extensive memorialisation which keeps happening in Singapore, no matter what. Raffles has a Midas touch to his name. Oh,
sorry.
Just to recapitulate, I know very little about the Raffles Country Club, but it's just one of those institutions which memorialises Raffles. His name is rather like a Midas touch. You mention Raffles and you've immediately got the idea of stature, status, esteem.
I should let everyone know that Nadia is actually a Marxist, meaning she follows Groucho Marx, who famously said, "I wouldn't want to become a member of any club who had me." So she knows nothing about the country club. So we've got a question there.
So thank you, for bringing to light, something that's obviously very sort of not very well known, and it goes against the grain of the story that we've been told so often in schools, especially, and so that's where most of us, get that understanding of what Singapore's history is. So now that you've sort of managed to crystallize these arguments of Farquhar's contributions, are there any plans, to reach out to schools, the Ministry of Education, to have this distributed, or to have, maybe a tour, maybe even?
Not that I know of, unfortunately. But look, I would point out that discussion of Farquhar's role was included in the secondary school curriculum, I think about 7 or 8 years ago. And I mentioned in my book that school students were asked to do projects and read information about Raffles and Farquhar and then make up their own minds. And there was one particular group which said, well, it's got to be Raffles because the railway station was named after him, and all the history books say so, and Farquhar, nothing's named after him, so obviously he wasn't important.
So wait, how did that sort of steamroll, sort of Raffles' name sort of became stamped on everything? How did that sort of happen? Where did it start?
Well, if you go back to the 1960s, S. Rajaratnam decided that officially Raffles founded Singapore and that nothing much happened before 1819 apart from ancestral ghosts, which were things of the past, and that officially Raffles was the founder, and after that things just escalated. So you have the strange, well, I find it strange that Singapore, an ultra-modern Asian country, has this white, almost imperialist as its national hero. And nothing seems to change. Should I stop?
I have a question for you, and also something to respond to that gentleman. The attention to Raffles is actually from 1960s is quite a late development. It actually began at the turn of the century, the 20th century. From the 1890s, where you mentioned the book there, Britain, at the age of high imperialism, colonial writings at the turn of the 20th century, emphasized Raffles over much else. And then, as you know, 100 years ago, there was a great centenary here. And so there was a lot of interest to promote Raffles because it was part of an imperial project as opposed to a colonial one. My question, therefore, is, have you studied anything about how Farquhar fit in when Raffles was all the rage 100 years ago, from the 1890s until the centenary of Singapore? You know, I'm curious to look at textbooks, colonial textbooks of that time, to see how the other people, the early people, the early governors were portrayed as they were promoting Raffles at that time.
I haven't read textbooks going back that far. I have read most of the, I've read all of the biographies of Raffles from 1897 right through to 2012. And apart from Victoria Glendinning's book, they just all praised Raffles and ridiculed or demeaned Farquhar. Now, at the time of Singapore's centenary, certainly some credence was given to Farquhar and the work he did. It was agreed that he'd done a lot of the spade work, but after all, it was Raffles who founded Singapore, and that's what it always comes back to. That although they will occasionally admit that Farquhar should be owed some credit, ultimately all the kudos will go back to Raffles.
Yes, I've noticed that too, because in Singapore, when they celebrated Raffles, the municipal authorities, in creating, you know, the statue and all that ceremony, I'm trying to look for anything that they have said about Farquhar at that time and why, you know, they would have excluded him in the official record.
Well, they excluded him because they didn't know that he'd done anything important, or they wouldn't recognise it because they wanted all the glory to go to Raffles. Raffles was the man. And the more he was glorified, the less space there was for Farquhar, and the fewer reasons to investigate him, because they thought Raffles had done everything, because Raffles told everyone he had done everything, and his biographers told everyone he had done everything, and that Farquhar was just a nuisance who disobeyed him and introduced opium laws without permission, which is wrong.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you very much